A recent report issued by the UK government calls for the UN to exclusively regulate worldwide geoengineering of the planet as an excuse to combat global warming. There are numerous patents and scientific proposals that focus around using man-made clouds and dispersal of aerosols to alter the atmosphere. Discussion of geoengineering technology is often framed as a future consideration, but governments are already conducting such programs at an advanced stage. And we are now joined by Rosalind Peterson of the Agriculture Defense Coalition, which is a watchdog group that monitors uncontrolled experimental weather modification programs and geoengineering. Agriculture Defense Coalition.org is the website. And Rosalind, right out the gate, I wanted to ask you about the calls on behalf of scientists to reduce global warming by injecting the atmosphere with aerosols. And we know the old saying goes, it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. Do you think that the governments are exploiting global warming as an excuse to play God?
I think that they are. Many of the scientists, and there aren't many really, that are advocating geoengineering or climate remediation, they sometimes call it, but they're talking about solar radiation management, which means that you're going to add particles and gases into the atmosphere artificially to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. And the idea is to use these schemes to mask the symptoms. They will have no effect on climate as far as changing our climate, and they won't have impacts on the weather, except that when you reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth, it does have an effect on ocean climate and our weather in that means. And so what's happening is that we are using and talking about these schemes in a way that says that we want to control the entire Earth's atmosphere, and that we're going to increase the pollutants and other things that are going to come down from these pollutants, chemicals and particles reaching the Earth after a period of time after they're introduced into the atmosphere by the ton.
Well, I know that President Obama's science czar, John P. Holdren, for example, he's a big advocate of geoengineering. There are proposals to disperse sulfur dioxide to reflect sunlight. And in fact, there's an article I'm looking at right now in the London Guardian titled Geoengineering, the Radical Ideas to Combat Global Warming, where leading climate scientist Ken Caldeira, he promotes the idea of aerosols, injecting aerosols into the atmosphere. But an environment loaded with sulfur dioxide, for example, now this is kind of stuff that sounds dangerous. I mean, isn't that the main compound in acid rain? Are these mad scientists we're talking about?
Well, yes. Sulfur dioxide is the component in acid rain that causes tree decline. And when they talk about putting that into the atmosphere, or aluminum oxide, which is also being suggested by David Keith, they're adding particles and these chemicals into the atmosphere, which are going to come down. They're going to cause acid rains. They're going to pollute our air and water. They're going to cause increasing asthma. And one of the reasons we took sulfur out of diesel fuel here in California is to reduce the increase in asthma in adults and children across the state of California. And now we're going to add it back into the atmosphere, supposedly to reduce global warming. But global warming, as you said, is being used as an excuse to begin to do the testing and research on these programs.
Well, I'm even looking at, I found a quote, and, we've got all these different scientists, even Nobel Prize winner Paul Crutzen. He suggested using 747s to dump huge quantities of sulfur particles again into the far reaches of the stratosphere to cool down the atmosphere. I have a quote from scientist Tim Flannery, where he warns that mankind might need to pump sulfur into the atmosphere to survive. So the world governments and scientists are getting us used to the idea of geoengineering, but we have plenty of evidence that suggests that they've been doing this for a long time. Am I right?
Yes, we have evidence to suggest that they have been doing atmospheric experiments for a long time. We have NASA documents. We have university studies. we have all kinds of information that has been conducted over a period of time. Experimental weather modifications are ongoing in the United States, according to NOAA, and also worldwide as well. And so there's documents to that effect. So we are having a tremendous impact on the climate and on our weather.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that some of these experiments have gone beyond the experimental stage and now that they're full-blown, fully operational covert programs?
Yes, I think some of them conducted by the military are probably covert activities of which we don't know.
Sure.
But there are so many that are public because of the research being conducted on these experiments that we know a lot about many of them ongoing not only here but in the United States but around the world.
Wow. Well, we've only got a few minutes tonight, but before we go, I was hoping you could briefly tell us about the melting of the glaciers in the Arctic and around Alaska. You posted some very interesting research on your website where it appears that many government agencies and leaders in the United States have discussed how the natural resources of those areas could be exploited if those areas were artificially warmed. I thought that was very interesting. I was hoping you could elaborate on that.
Yes, it's been discussed back since the Carter administration and then the Nixon administration that warming the colder areas, such as the Arctic and Alaska, would allow for the exploitation of natural resources, oil, gas, and other minerals in those areas. It would be an advantage for the military and also shipping to be able to travel in those areas during the winter months when most of the time it's frozen. And Shell Oil has talked to Charlie Rose a couple of years ago in a program where they talked about being able to get in now that the climate is changing there and things are warming so that they can extract oil and natural gas in the regions. And now the permits are being approved for them and other companies to do so.
You know, I think I even saw a CNN report on your website that says that shipping lanes are wide open in that area because of climate change.
Yes, that's correct. And also there's military threats of engagement as well between Russia and the United States in that CNN report, which I do have on the Alaska section of my website. And you can really now look and see just exactly how much money and how much they want to continue to artificially warm those areas, because if they froze again, then they couldn't do the exploitation of the oil and natural gas in those areas. So there's actually part of our government is thinking about and wants to keep this artificial warming that's occurring partially because of aviation jet contrails, according to Stanford reports and NASA reports that these contrails warm the environment. And when you keep those contrails up, contrails produce water vapor, jet engines produce water vapor. So we're artificially warming those areas, and I think it's for financial exploitation of those areas.
Wow, interesting indeed. Well, we certainly want you to keep us posted on any new developments there. Meanwhile, I encourage everyone to visit the Agriculture Defense Coalition website. I mean, it is loaded with valuable information. It's got all kinds of studies, PDF files, videos, you name it. I spend lots of time there myself, and I visit the website often. So, Rosalind, it was great to have you with us. Take care, Godspeed, and please come back and spend more time with us in the near future.
I will, and thank you for having me on your show today.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you for tuning in tonight. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. We will be back next week, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time. Well, usually about that time, we try the best we can. Until then, good night, God bless, and we'll catch you again next week. Thank you.